That's a great question, and I think that's probably the easier of the two. When we're working towards strength, muscular size is always going to benefit. Okay, so and I use myself as an example because years of powerlifting, powerlifters, we tend to neglect certain body parts, right? We build up our posterior chain, we build up our hamstrings, we build up our triceps, and we tend to lack some things like shoulders, biceps, quads. So adding some of those aesthetic and those bodybuilding things in can enhance a lifter in their strength and bring up some of those weaknesses. So I think in those regards, by adding some bodybuilding into some strength work, it really does balance out nicely. So while even though you're working towards strength goals for a period of say 4 or 5 months, it's easy to add in some extra volume at the end of your workout, to add a bodybuilding day where all you come in and do is some extra recovery work and some extra bodybuilding work to add that volume in. So that's pretty easy to do. Now your next question would be to how to do the flip side, which is a little bit trickier because anytime you are working towards building serious size and mass, it gets a little trickier to keep strength work in. And I'm not saying you can't do the two. I have been working with Scott Paltos for the last year, and he has done a phenomenal job of balancing that out, where we focus on my strength work. My bench has gone up, my squat has gone up, my deadlifts have all gone up because we've been able to keep some of that bodybuilding work in. But when it's time to really focus in on the aesthetics, especially when you're talking about getting on stage, that's where that strength work is going to have to take a little bit of a back seat, because if you're focusing solely on bringing up certain muscle groups and you're talking about bringing in the shoulder pec tie-in, or you're talking about bringing in the glute hamstring tie-in, all of those things take a little bit of detail. And so some of that strength work might need to be on hold for a little bit in order to bring up some of those details. So I hope that makes sense a little bit. But anytime you're dieting and anytime you're stepping on stage, you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of that strength work simply because you're losing size and losing mass. Great question. I'm going to touch on a couple things here as far as technique goes. One being a geared powerlifter, using squat suits and bench shirts for 15 years, transitioning out of that took some time. I don't think people realize the difference between the two. When you're solely focusing on your raw strength, some technique is going to have to change. I went from a very wide powerlifting style squat with a suit on, and I had to bring that in, which of course causes you to have to use more hamstring, have to use more glute. I was very dominant in my low back, so I had to be able to take that out of it and actually get my posterior chain to really engage and get involved. And now you start talking about not just the powerlifting side of things, but talking about bodybuilding and feeling muscular contractions. There is a difference, and I think that's where people tend to look at the difference between the two. People might automatically assume that, oh, maybe bodybuilders aren't very strong, because they're using less weight, when really all they are doing is literally focusing on a muscular contraction. They're focusing on making sure that the right muscles are being used, the right muscles are being contracted. A leg curl, a leg extension, a lat pull down, anything like that. We can use heavy weight, but at some point there has to be a give and take of just heaving a weight and actually feeling it contract. And I think that's a big difference between powerlifters and bodybuilders. Powerlifters want to move weight. We don't care what it is. We don't care how we do it. At some point, technique may actually take a back seat in order to just move the weight. Not even just in your big lifts, but you're talking barbell rows, you're talking overhead presses, you're talking about some of those big accessory movements where all we're doing is looking to move weight. Where a bodybuilder is going to take their time a little bit, slow things down, and actually feel a muscular contraction. That was a big change for me, going from let's just hammer some heavy weights, let's do some heavy rows, let's move some weight, let's curl, let's tricep extension, let's do all these things that are going to build my lifts, and let's just move weight. I don't care what else happens. And now what I'm learning is that backtracking a little bit in order to bring up some weaknesses, not just strength-wise, but aesthetically too. So a lat pull down, how do I get my lats wider? Maybe I need to lighten the weight and actually focus on squeezing those muscles. How am I going to make my arms bigger to match the tricep size that I had for powerlifting? I had to lower the weight and actually focus on feeling a contraction. So there is a big difference. In the big lifts, Most certainly as well. And from my experience, a lot of it has to come from the geared side towards the raw side. So because I'm not a true bodybuilder at heart, I still have that power lifter inside of me. I'm always going to go, my big lifts are always going to be geared towards strength. And then the way Scott and I build our program is to bring up my aesthetics and the physique side of things through a lot of my accessory work.